All right, this is show number 142, recorded on April 7th, 2015. And tonight we have returning Rob Sylvan coming to us from last time you were on was show number 120 back in August, Rob.
Wow.
Yeah,
All
time
right.
flies.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I knew back then that we wanted to have you on again to talk about the subject we're talking about tonight. Something that we haven't talked about since show number 2. And back in show number 2, we were audio only. And I had my cousin on to talk about it. He is big into stock photography, and that's what we're talking about tonight. But tonight we're talking with Rob about it, about stock photography. Before we get into that, though, first I should mention Tim is not here tonight. Tim is celebrating I believe it's the anniversary. If I got that wrong, let's just pretend he's celebrating an anniversary with his wife.
It's good that he remembered.
Yes. I remember he said tonight, I checked with him just to make sure, and he's not coming tonight. But before we get into Rob, I want to mention that we're giving away the the Adobe Creative Cloud photography plan, 12-month prepaid membership, includes Lightroom and Photoshop. After 12 months, it'll either stop or you'll have to renew it yourself. But 12 months prepaid already for you, and it's super easy. What do you have to do to get that? To be eligible to get that, all you got to do is go to our website, and almost every page on the right-hand side, there is a thing that says subscribe to our newsletter, and then where you enter your email address and hit subscribe. Really easy. When we reach a certain level, a certain number of people who have subscribed, we'll then pick a random person to win, and we'll mail it to you. Super easy. And the great news is right now we don't even have a newsletter. So you'll be signing up and getting nothing. So no, and we're not going to spam you even once we do it, but it's, you're not signing up and then me sending you something every week. It's going to be once a month at most, and you'll get a couple of months there before we send something out. But once we do get a newsletter, my plan is to do the normal stuff to say, here's what's coming up next month. Here's maybe a short little article on something photography related, but I also want to highlight previous guests and what they've done. So maybe we'll highlight Rob and say, here's some of the things Rob's up to lately. And it'll just be me tracking it, Rob. I won't have to even reach out to you. I'll just see you doing something and say, hey, go see this. I noticed one of our previous guests, Steve Castile, I don't know if you know him. He's underwater dog photographer. Now he's doing underwater babies.
Okay. Wow.
So that would have been a great thing to put in a newsletter, just to let you keep up with what all our guests are doing, because they continue on doing great things.
Cool.
So
Sounds like a great deal.
It is a great deal. You got to do very little to get that. And if you don't already have that, if you don't have Photoshop, which can be expensive, and now you can only get it through subscribing, here, just get you into it.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, I'd mentioned that back in show number 2, which was a long time ago, we covered stock photography, and I should give you a little bit of my background way back in the earlier days of iStock. Not the beginning, but earlier days. I uploaded 18 photos to iStock, and there's still 18 there. And the beauty of it is I have earned several $1,000s from those images and done nothing. Now, there's like one that has sold over $1,000 or around $1,000, and then a few others that have sold a little bit less.
Yeah.
And some of them I think have sold very, very little. But, it kind of got me into it, and then I backed off, got busy with life, and didn't do any more. So I know a lot has changed since the days of me getting into iStock.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind giving us a rundown of maybe just starting with what stock photography is.
Yeah. Well, originally stock photography was a way for assignment photographers to kind of breathe some new life into their kind of library that was sitting around. And people might need an image of a certain kind, and they already had it, so they didn't have to go out and reshoot it. And back when I got started in it, which was in kind of late 90s, more as a user, as a someone on the design side, Back then, the cheap route was to have a CD-ROM, of like clip art. That was the stock of the time, and you would get a big book, and you can kind of page through to see the thumbnails, and then you would find that number on the CD, and that's what you would use. Um, it was still early for having any kind of online searchable database that we have now. Never mind, what there is now, and we did that a lot. We did occasionally hire a photographer for certain jobs that we had, if the budget allowed, but a lot of times it didn't. It was a small company, and you know, budgets were tight, and we just had to make do with what we had. And we did lots of head swapping, with clip art, and we had some creative design people to make stuff work. And we would need stuff. Really, a lot of time was just kind of filler content or something to kind of go along with the story or go along. I worked for a company that did educational training that was, at the time, migrating content that was on CD-based training to web-based training, and we would often just need like an image of someone holding a ladder, or somebody washing their hands, or somebody just talking to somebody else, or somebody in front of a whiteboard, that kind of stuff. And what was great when we could afford to have a model and a photographer and a location to custom, storyboard out what we needed and shoot it. It was a luxury to be able to do that. But most of the budgets, we just couldn't afford to do that. So we either had an illustrator on staff who would literally draw what we needed, or when we really needed photographs, we had to kind of resort to stock. And it was early 2000s when I stumbled across iStock Photo. It had just moved from a model where it was, if you uploaded content, it gave you the ability to download content. So it was really almost like sharing. It was a site that was really created by designers, web designers, for other web designers. And it was at the kind of the dawn of digital photography, when all of a sudden people were finding that they had the ability to capture digital, and at a price that was, pretty accessible. It was at that time when my son, who's now 13, was on the way, and I got my first digital camera, a little Kodak point and shoot type thing, and I loved it. I just fell in love with it. And when I kind of had this kind of outlet, and then found this resource that we were using, and then found out that I could actually send in my own content. And at the time, they had moved from this free share model to every license, regardless of the size, was 25 cents. You can license any content for 25 cents. And then the contributor would get a nickel. And so obviously it was not a money-making scheme for anybody. And but it just exploded on the scene, on the web scene especially. Web people were just like, oh my God, you got to use this content. It was just so accessible. And, if you just needed a hammer, or some Apple or some, kind of stuff like that, you could find that kind of stuff. It wasn't until the first, really, I think it was probably the first Canon Rebel, that was the first DSLR that was kind of sub $1,000 that kind of came on the scene, that kind of really took the content to another level, because now people were able to have a little bit better equipment. And then we started to see more people images. More contributors were willing, even though the price had probably only gone to about $1 an image at that time. We're willing, well, I'll be a model. I'll stand in front of the camera and fire it remotely, and I'll be the subject. And some of our most successful contributors at the time were using themselves as their model, as their subject, or they used their boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or husband or kids or dog, cat, all that kind of stuff too. And so I got really involved with the community there, and eventually became one of the people who accepted content, and did a lot of different jobs over the years for iStock Photo, and got to be really well acquainted with people. iStock at the time was based out of Calgary. The office, as far as I know, is still in Calgary, even though they're owned by Getty Images now. And so here I am in New Hampshire. We were doing lots of chatting and emailing and message and forums and stuff like that to stay connected. But the whole experience was pretty much an online experience anyway. And so I got involved with many aspects of the company over the years, and everything from representing them at trade shows to moderating the forums and inspecting the content coming on and helping contributors and all kinds of things. So it was a pretty good education for me, kind of coming in as a customer and then kind of becoming a contributor and then kind of working on the backside of it too.
Yeah.
Really got to learn a lot from some really great folks over the years. So yeah, and it's still, that same model still exists where you need an image for your blog, brochure, calendar, annual report, whatever. It's really very easy, and there's some really great stuff in all kinds of places to find an image that really works for any one of those book covers.
Yeah, I'd imagine any photo you want that you can think of, you can find that topic out there.
Yeah, where it's where it gets harder is anything that is either copyright protected, trademarked, celebrity, all that kind of stuff. You can't get that to put on your blog necessarily, or on your book cover. Then that gets more complicated. But yeah, just for general things, common things, people doing things, people at different places, or just the places themselves. Yeah, all that is pretty well covered, and continues to be even more covered, every moment. The volume of images that are getting fed into all of these places is just phenomenal. Then if you, never mind rolling in Flickr and, other places like that are starting to dabble in stock imagery too. So
one of the coolest things for me, because I'm not making a living off of this, I think I mentioned I only made a few $1,000s, and that's not going to be a living, especially considering the time frame it took me to do that. And that wasn't my intention there. But one of the cool things for me is, all of a sudden I'll run upon one of my images somewhere on the web. And I actually use, I don't know if you, I'm sure you've heard of this, and I don't know if the people listening have heard, a website called TinEye, Tineye, and I'm sure there's other ways to do it too. But I would search for some of my photos using TinEye to see where they're being used, because the stock agency is not telling you where they're being used.
Right. Yeah, and they can't. I mean, they can't usually because they don't know. In the royalty free arena anyway. There's just not that kind of interaction between the person licensing the image and the place it's being licensed from. It's just they have a record of a transaction, and they might know a username, but they have no idea to know that this is just mom and pop blogger, or if this is someone for a big company or a church group, or who, they just have no way to know that. So,
we came across a book that was on Amazon it was a children's book, and on the cover was my son eating a hot dog. And of course, we bought 3 of them, one for us, one for the grandparents, and said, "Here you go." And it's sitting on our bookshelf upstairs in our family room right now.
Yeah, well, it's always great when you encounter your stuff that way. That's definitely one of the fun things about it. And what I find when you're kind of involved in the community of it, people will find it for you, or they'll encounter it and they'll let you know. You'll get Facebook message or email, and somebody's taken a picture of it with their phone or mailed it to you. I've gotten stuff in the mail. People have sent stuff in. So that's always kind of fun to see. And Google Images, Google's image search can do it too. It's another, TinEye is really cool technology, but it actually goes out and literally indexes the entire web. I don't know how much of it it's got now. So it doesn't have everything. I don't know how Google's image search works, but it seems to be a little more up to date. Okay. And I know that at the time, Getty Images, an IStock photo worked with Google to make sure all of their stuff was indexed. So some are easier to find, than other, depending on the source of where it's come from. But yeah, people always love seeing their stuff in action and find it, whether for good or bad, because sometimes you find stuff and you go, no, they really shouldn't be using that, or how did they get that, or,
So I have lots of questions coming to my mind. And Stephen, I know you have a question out in chat. You actually have 2. I'm going to come back to you. But
Okay.
you mentioned, Rob, just now that sometimes you may use it in ways you don't necessarily like. I didn't have any problem with this. They use my son. I have a photo of my son walking on a trail, and it's from behind, and they use it on an autism brochure. He doesn't have autism, but I don't have any problem with that. It was used in a good way to market something to families who have autism. But there could be a case where somebody might use your image in a way that if you were working with that person, you would have never let them use it. And that's part of the price of stock photography, right?
Yeah, it's it's challenging because everyone kind of comes at this from a different perspective and different experience level, and I kind of look at it in that I wouldn't submit any image to be royalty-free stock unless I was really comfortable with knowing that I have no control over how this could be used. And I have no control over how it could be used legally, like via the license. People could be totally compliant with the license and still maybe I disagree politically or emotionally or whatever and how it actually gets used, and have to be okay with that. Or it could be a situation where someone found it in use correctly, stole it essentially, and now is using it for some other purpose, and I might not like that, and that's a different case. Or maybe anytime you find something not being used in compliance with the license under which you license it, then most agencies will have some means to assist you in getting that removed from that, and that does happen all the time.
And yeah, I'd imagine it's in their interest too, because they're missing out on some of the royalties.
Yeah, but you still have to be okay with not having that control, right?
Absolutely, right.
And I always had the kind of the policy that I would never ask a model or a person, not even someone who's professionally a model, but just some person who I'm wanting to use their likeness for a stock image. I would never have them be in a position that I wouldn't put myself in, as a subject. We've done some group photo shoots in the past, and one of them was at a school we had the run of, and there was some great locations, but somehow we wound up in the men's room and did some poses in there. Probably would put a damper on my political career if I ever went there. But you kind of have to have that attitude that if you're going to ask other people to be okay with having their likeness used in a way that you don't control, you should at least be willing to step up too and be on the other side of the camera. So I always can hold that up as like, hey, I'm willing to do this. You can stand there and hold an apple, or whatever. I'm going to, pretty innocuous thing I'm going to ask you to do. So.
Well, that let me get into Stephen's question then, because you kind of touched on it there. So let's say he's saying here, I did a huge commercial job for a franchise barbershop, did tons of candid haircut stuff, and have all the releases and own the copyright. But he from what I understand from this question, he did it for a shoot for them. What he's saying now is, but I'm not sure they'd be okay if I sold them since they wanted the photos for their shop. So if you have model releases for a photo shoot, could you then use them in stock?
Well, yes. I mean, without knowing the wording in the release, assume it's a release that covers this type of use. Then sure, you could. I would never just use someone's image for royalty-free stock without speaking to the model at the very least. To make sure they're cool with it. And if it was on a location, like within a salon where it was on a private property, I would want to get their buy-in too, especially if it was a place where they hired me for the job. Now, I think that's the way to do it because I don't want to create a problem for myself down the road, even if I'm in the right, because you still could have a situation where, say, an image, and this is probably how it would happen, right? One of these images would get used in a way that they didn't like, then they find it, and now you have to explain yourself and deal with a bunch of a hassle. And just because they signed a paper and agreed, for something, maybe sure you're maybe in the right there, but who wants to deal with that? Who wants to deal with the potential cost of that and the headache of that? I'd much rather have a good relationship with both the people that I photographed and the location that I was in, and they might be fine with it. And if they're not, then and you might have just saved yourself a big headache. And if you think that what you have is actually good stock, and those people don't go with it, well, now you've got a good idea of how to actually hire people with this intention, and say, okay, hey, maybe have a good relationship with that salon and say, hey, do you mind if I can come in on an off hour? I have these two models. One's going to be the stylist, one's going to be the customer, and we're just going to be shooting for an hour. And now you've established a good relationship, and maybe you can still continue to work there. So it's always better when it comes to stock to actually shoot the content with that in mind, and not try to repurpose stuff you shot for some other reason. And I say that because I see a lot of people struggle with rejection for that reason, where it's probably a good shot for technical reasons and for lighting reasons. It's but maybe it just doesn't work for stock because it just doesn't convey the message, or it just looks a little too staged, or whatever the thing is. So it's hard to say without seeing it, but I always like to do things that ethically I feel good about, and then if I saw this person on the street, I'd be happy to say, hey, your image is doing great, and I saw it in this place, and not feel like, ooh, geez, I hope they don't, hope they never see this. I hope I never have to hear from them again. Yeah. The world's just too small, for that.
I agree. I think you got to be upfront with the person. And if you're doing a shoot like that and you go, well, this is working out great, I'd like to do some stock, that you should then say that to that person. Because imagine as barber, and you brought up political, that's a great one. Let's say you have no control over where this image is going to be used. We know that. But let's say you have one political leaning, and that guy wakes up one day and sees his photo or her photo and an ad for the other side. Right. And now they're going to be, what the heck? I had you come here to take photos for my shop, and now I'm advertising for the person I would never vote for. So I think that's what you got to worry about, Stephen. So if you're going to shoot for stock, I think you got to tell them and get the model releases and all that, and be upfront with them that, hey, you have no control over where this is going to be.
Yeah, because it's not like, I don't think anyone would dispute the fact that you own the copyright. That's totally yours. And you got permission for for whatever the purpose was that you discussed on that day, and that's all great and legit. But I think if I were to be able to sleep well at night knowing that I'm using this image in a way that I'm making additional revenue, that's cool, nothing wrong with that. But I have no control over how this is going to be used. I want them to be a party to that decision beforehand. And just give them the chance to say no.
What about, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just like, I would just want people to do the same, for me,
right.
If it was the other way around.
You wouldn't want to have hired somebody for a photo shoot and then all of a sudden see your image out everywhere being used for things that you don't agree with.
Yeah, or even something simple like, so say we're in a salon, it's obviously the shoot is about getting your hair cut or styled or whatever, and now it's up on stock site. Well, now any other salon could use that image as well.
There you go.
And maybe that now salon owner's like, hey, why is my image, being used on the brochure for my rival, my rival salon across town? Stranger things have happened. So much better to, just be upfront with everybody. And
what about the fact that you're shooting in this salon? So I'm going to stick with the salon scene for right now, and then I want to move on to something else. But it's shooting in the salon, and in the salon, I've got various products that are behind me, Vidal Sassoon or whatever kind of hair shaping and shaving cream, whatever. And every once in a while, one of those makes it into the image in the background. It's not the featured image, but you can make it out. What do I? It seems they're going to need a property release, which I got to imagine is really easy to get.
You're going to want to win that Photoshop subscription that you were giving away, so that you can get in there and remove exactly. So you can remove all logos and stuff. When it comes to any kind of trademarked item, it's assumed you're not going to get a any kind of property release or anything like that. And then at the same time, you can't really use trademark content in something else, that in a royalty-free license. Apple, is not going to give me the permission to use it. Now, there's some gray area. There's always gray area. There's lots of gray area in stock photography, right? And so, if it's this, shampoo bottle or whatever, and it's way in the background and it's very tiny and it's out of focus and nobody can really tell what it is, yeah, that's probably not a problem. If it's the person holding it and you see the logo and you see the color scheme, then that's obviously a problem. So somewhere between that and the other, is a lot of gray area. And right. It's always, the motto we have is when in doubt, clone it out. So if you're asking yourself, if you're asking someone else, then you're in doubt, just clone it out. That's just the safest way to go. Or remove it before you shoot. I mean, ideally, if you're going to be shooting a scene for stock purposes, then it's in your best interest to either move that stuff out of the scene or turn it to an angle that the logo doesn't show. Have people wear non-logoed clothing. Do all those things to help you not have to spend any time in Photoshop cloning stuff out.
Because, back when I was doing this, I looked at it, I think it was 2006, 2008, somewhere in that time frame. They would review your image. They would pull your images up at 100% and look at them really close. If you did clone something out, you need to make sure you did a great job at it, because they will notice it if there's any imperfections.
Yeah, it can't look like some kind of, sleazy, black bar over the thing,
or sticks that kind of do like this.
Exactly. It has to be as if it was never there,
right?
And that goes for any identifiable information, not just logos and stuff. But if I had a name tag on, that would have to go. If it was an outdoor scene and a license plate, that would have to go. If it was the make and model of a car, that would have to go. Anything that is kind of a recognizable, identifiable information, that probably is going to get flagged and wind up getting it rejected. So
that covers property. Now, people, even back then, and I'm sure it's at least this strict now, is if I had anybody in a photo that they could reasonably identify themselves. So it didn't even have to be them facing the camera. It could even be them walking away the back of their head, but maybe they had a tattoo on their left shoulder and they could identify themselves. I would need to have a motto release for every one of those people. Is that still the case? Yeah,
because, well, for one, if you're using someone's likeness in this arena, then the understanding is you've had some conversation with them and that they're part of this. If it's just a total, kind of street photography, grab shot kind of deal, then that's not really a good stock candidate, probably. You might want to recreate that scene, but that's what they want to avoid. So could you be legally in the clear to use something or have something to make something like that available to be used? Yes, sure, you could. And there's probably, some places have what's, considered an editorial license where I'm standing in Times Square and every logo and person and everything is visible. And now that content can only be used in an editorial fashion. So like in a newspaper or in an encyclopedia or some kind of, whatever the license covers for that. Can't be used in a commercial product. So there's some opportunity for that kind of stuff, but it generally is less lucrative and not what most people are looking for. So if an agency or a site or whatever doesn't have an editorial option, then you definitely have to have a model release. And if they do have an editorial option, they might have certain constraints, narrow constraints on what they're looking for. They're not just looking for somebody with, a 600 millimeter lens who's just sniping people in the park. They're wanting stuff that still looks like, it was created for stock, not something that was just done on the sly and people are just kind of unaware. And unfortunately, the society we live in right now, people are much more trigger happy for, filing a lawsuit or making a claim or making a stink or whatever. They're much more likely to see that content, Whereas, 20 years ago, if I appeared in some print ad or some book in some place, I would never know,
Right.
Um, but these days, it's just too easy for something to fall in front of somebody else's eyes and for that to be transmitted back to the person and found out. And so, yeah, and that's, I think what we're starting to see, the trend is to more authentic looking stock that looks like it is real, people doing real things. But it still has to be kind of be created with a stock in mind for all those other concerns. So
Yeah, there's a question out there about a model release for your children. So my stock images, when we look at them a little bit later, most of them are of my children, and I did do a model release for them, and then I think you signed it as the guardian because they're a minor.
right, yep,
So
and then you still have to have a witness sign that too. Is
right.
typical, yeah.
So even though they're your child and you can force them into this job, you have to submit a model release along with
Sure.
that. You do get to
Yeah.
sign it, and like you say, get a witness.
Yeah, well, and you have to think too that whoever's on the other end of receiving that content to review it, they have no idea if it's you and if it's your kid or not.
Right.
You know,
They want a
so if
clear
I was
title.
when I was in that seat, watching, reviewing images coming in, even of people that I might have interacted with and known, in that internet sense, you still have no way to know that whether this is your kid, your uncle, your niece, your some neighbor, and so it's just a matter of making sure you're covering your bases and making sure that everything's in the clear. It also acts as kind of a filter, really. Um, so much of the constraints for submitting content is really kind of acts as a filter. So it kind of weeds out stolen images to a certain extent. It weeds out lesser quality images, stuff that was maybe grabbed on a phone that wasn't of good quality. So by having just some basic standards on pixel dimensions and model releases and property releases and technical standards, it just by virtue of that helps to kind of filter down the amount of content that's coming in and hopefully to a better quality of content because when I worked at iStock Photo, and that was years ago, it still was like drinking from a fire hose, and it has to be some way to kind of put some other filters in place to kind of weed out the stuff that just shouldn't be coming in front of these people that are essentially being paid to look at it. You want to make their time more useful and efficient by hopefully delivering a better grade of content to begin with. So.
Right. What about property? Because Stephen out there in chat, I know he does real estate photography, and he was asking, "Hey, I'm here doing this real estate photography for my real estate agent. I'm photographing some beautiful homes. He's already working to get the lighting and all this stuff right. But what issues do you have with trying to sell through stock real estate or any kind of, let's say, architecture type image?"
Well, part of it depends if you're inside or outside, right? So if you're inside, someone else's private property, it's in your best interest to get their permission to be a partner with you on this use. If you're out on the street and you're in public, in the United States at least anyway, still, you can take pictures in public, and you're not encroaching on anybody's right of privacy. And what you probably will see as a requirement is to have, if there was a sign out, if I took a picture of my house, which there isn't, but if there was a sign that says, welcome to the Sylvans home, you'd want to have to either not include that or remove it after the fact. So you'd want to be able to take out any identifiable information, and now it just kind of becomes a generic home. But it's still good to, be in communication with the people whose content, whose stuff, is involved. Like I have, an image that I've used for stock and for my books and stuff of a barn, a red barn. It's my neighbor's barn, but the photos were all taken from my property, from my house looking over, and I see this barn. So, he has a nice print that I gave him of it, and he knows what I do, and he's seen it in other places, and and it's okay, and it's not like he's not running a business out of that barn. I'm not somehow infringing on his ability to earn money from that barn or anything like that. So it's more just a common courtesy of like, hey, that's your barn,
Yeah.
isn't that cool? So could you just walk down any street taking pictures of homes and upload them for stock? Yeah, you probably could, but what is what's the purpose? What's the content? What's the message? With stock, it's always about some message you're trying to convey visually, because you're thinking someone's going to use this in conjunction with some kind of text, usually a story, a headline, whatever it has to go with. So there has to be some kind of clear message in there, as well as whatever technical aspects of photography that need to be there too. So like real estate is a very popular category for stock imagery. People handing keys in front of houses with a real estate sign in the front, and the kid on the lawn, or that's a kind of a classic iconic image. So just take the few extra moments to communicate with the property owner and say, hey, we've got this done. Do you mind if I just take some shots? I'm going to use for stock. I'm not going to do anything that's reveals the location or the identity or anything like that. I'm just it's a really nice garden you have, or a really nice whatever, and then you're just in the clear. There are property releases you can download from any agency or site and take it that extra step. I'm not a lawyer, and anyone who is will tell you, any agreement's as good as the paper it's written on. So if you don't have anything written, that may not protect you, even though you're had a conversation. So if you can always have a release signed, even if it's not something you get asked to submit, that just gives you that extra layer of protection. And it also just shows that the person you're talking to, that you're serious about what you're doing. And if they shy away, people say, well, geez, if I bring out this release, they might say no. Well, that's good for you to know.
Get to know out of the way.
Yeah, because if they say no now when you're asking them, then no harm, no foul. If you find out you're getting that no when they see it on a billboard on their way to work, now you've got a problem.
Right.
So anyone who says no to either a property release or a model release, those are people you don't want to work with for stock photography, and they're telling you that right away. So that's good for you to know.
And this is different than posting photos on Facebook, because
right.
Facebook, you're not putting it there to sell, and somebody's not buying those images to use in their ad, or like you said, billboard, or whatever they're doing with it. So
right.
What kind of we've talked a lot about some different stuff here and some different specifics. What kind of photos are generally good with stock, and what kind of requirements am I looking at? You said phones. As I drop my phone, phones are not of good enough quality for most of these, or any. Back when I started, I was using a 4-megapixel Nikon D2H, which I imagine now is not good enough. What am I looking at for file requirements, size requirements, and then also what are good stock photos?
Yeah, well, when it comes to the technology side of it, it's not fair to say phones aren't good enough, because that's not only not true because the quality's gotten so much better, but it's actually become so popular in popular culture, Instagram and Facebook and everything, that it's a look that companies are looking for. On Stocksy, where I am now, we actually have a mobile month, and it was really popular, and people were submitting images literally taken from their phones. And there's nothing wrong with that. And one of our contributors, I've known for many years in this, his name's Kevin Russ, has just been shooting with his iPhone for the last few years, and just some phenomenal stuff. And he just was doing this whole thing for like a year or more, where he was literally traveling with nomadic people on trains out in the West and taking pictures just with his iPhone and licensing it, and just living from it, and he did the same thing just traveling out West on his own, and it's just great stuff. So just, you could use your phone, but now you've got, whatever limitations you have that a phone presents. So, if you need to trigger strobes or, you need to do other things, that might present some problems. But there's certainly plenty of good content that was been taken by any type of device that we would otherwise call a phone, but you may never actually use it as a phone, but it still kind of falls under the phone category. So many sites are going to have, some minimum pixel dimension requirement. It might be 6 megapixels, which is, anymore for nothing. Any current phone is probably going to have at least that much. So that shouldn't be a burden. Otherwise, the technical requirements are going to vary. When I was at iStock, we really kind of hammered a lot on technical issues around noise, exposure, things not being right, over processing afterwards, like noise reduction, things like that. Over sharpening, sure. On Stocksy, we're more looking at the message, the look of the image, a lot more forgiving on minor technical issues like noise if it was high ISO or something like that. But generally speaking, you have to realize that these images could be cropped down and blown up, could be used in ways you don't expect. So you want to have as good, clean of an image as you can get. Most sites, the way their licensing works is by file dimensions. It's somewhat of an outdated assumption, I think, but it works, and it's kind of become the standard that the larger the pixel dimensions, the more it's going to cost. So it's to your benefit to have a camera that produces, the largest, whatever size the agency offers, so that you can take advantage of that upper price level. And that's usually just a function of pixel dimensions.
I think by looking at it yesterday, and my images with that 4 megapixel camera, the highest they go to is a medium on their scale, and that's only one from the bottom. Small is the bottom, and then medium's next.
Yeah, and so you want to be, if your interest is in earning some revenue, then you want to be able to take advantage of the larger sizes, and that there might be particular companies or uses that they want to, want a large size for print, and if your size doesn't fit, then you miss out on their business. So it certainly is in your best interest to fill all the sizes that are available so that you can take advantage of all the licensing opportunities that exist at any given outlet.
And what would be a price that I would generally get for, let's say, I don't know what size camera you want to talk about, but what kind of price am I talking about getting here?
Well, it really varies, right? So there's, on the one side of the equation, there's whatever the fee is, the licensing fee that a site offers. And that varies widely. And then there's kind of two general models in terms of how stock gets licensed these days. One is the pay-as-you-go type of model. So I want to license your image of the kid eating a hot dog, and it costs me $100 to do that. Or maybe it costs me $10, or maybe it costs me $5. It's really such a wide range that there is no standard. There is no one size, one price out there. And so whatever the agency I go to, that's the price that I'll find there. There are plenty of contributors who contribute their work to multiple places, so you might find it, available at a top end of $100 here. It might be $200 there. It might be $1 here. It's just that crazy. And then the other type of model is a subscription model, where I, as a customer, pay X dollars a month, and that allows me to download X number of images per month or per day or per whatever the requirement, whatever the arrangement is. And that's really, advantageous for a big company that has a big volume of content, and they want their people to be able to download whatever they need on a given basis. And they just treat these agencies, these sites, as their own private database of images. So when they need something, they know they can download 15 images a day, and they do that. And the assumption is that not everybody uses their quota, and so that's how these companies, are also making their money.
And they're talking out in chat about, Steven says, "Sweet, I have a D810 which shoots 36
There you
megapixel. And that does probably put him at the upper end of the file size.
Sure.
But, the person buying it may buy that file size, or they may buy a smaller file size. They have, at least at iStock, they have the option to buy different sizes. And if you're buying it for web, you may not want the biggest size.
Yeah. Do you have that Stocksy page up?
I do.
Something that people can see. Yeah. If you click into one of those images,
I'm going to click on your second one
there.
here, which is the three ladies looking at a phone.
Yeah. All right. And so that looks like it goes from small up to extra large, up to large.
Extra large. Yep. All the way to extra large.
So there's, like I said, there's no standard, there's no conformity among other sites. One of the things we're trying to do at Stocksy is keep the pricing simple and straightforward. And there's not like, the Magic Gold collection, then there's the Bark and Basement tub, and, all these other things where you might do a search on, women with phone, and you get all these results back. And one of them, the top price is $5. Another one, the top price is $100. And you're like, what's the difference? They're this, subject's the same. The size available is the same, but this one costs 3 times as much as the other one. And that's always just a function of how that site kind of evolved into creating these multi-tiers of pricing. And it's incredibly arbitrary and somewhat fake. It's just like, there's no qualitative difference necessarily. I mean, there might be, but that isn't the reason why the price is different. The price is different because maybe one person is exclusive to that agency and the other one isn't, right. Or that person has some other deal, or that content came from a different provider, or whatever the other behind the scenes that as a consumer, you're like, I don't know anything about that. I just want to license this image, and I don't understand why this one is 3 times as much as the other one, but it is.
Speaking of exclusivity, when I first started, I was on Dreamtime,
yep.
Shutterstock, and iStock, and then I really wasn't doing very well on the other two, and I decided to go exclusive on iStock.
Yeah.
So I don't know what people are doing now, whether that's the thing, or hey, you want to be spread out as much as you can. But I do want to point, before you answer that, to Stephen out there, if you see this image we have pulled up here, you have a choice. The purchaser has a choice between small, medium, large, and extra large, going from $10 all the way up to $100. So having it DA10 gives you the ability to sell at those higher resolutions. The person buying it may or may not buy those higher resolutions, but it does give you that option.
Right. And on Stocksy, one of the nice things about Stocksy, we've only been around for 2 years. And I say we because I'm more and was there from the start. And it's a co-op. You're
breaking up a little bit there.
So
I'm losing.
Can you hear me? Are you?
Oh, now it sounds like I think you're coming back now.
Way back?
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. Nope, could be, I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows?
I'm out in the woods here in New Hampshire. Maybe it's windy outside. So Stocksy was actually created by Bruce Livingstone and his wife Brianna, who Bruce was the original founder of iStock Photo. And there's a whole long story about how he went from that to this. But one of the kind of driving reasons for why Stocksy was created was to create a opportunity for photographers, for contributors to actually get a higher percentage of the royalty. And so as a co-op, we're all members of the co-op, and we all kind of are part of it. So we all get 50% of every transaction. Whereas on iStock, even as an exclusive contributor at the topmost level, I think it tops out at 40%.
Right.
As a non-exclusive contributor, I think it goes down to like 16 or 18% of you get as a royalty. And then they have all these tiers that you can over time, rise up to, but it only lasts for a year, and then they change, there's a bit of a moving target there.
So Stocksy, you get 50%? Everybody does?
Everybody does.
Even if is there an exclusivity or anything?
No, nothing like that. The content on Stocksy is exclusive to Stocksy. So I could have work on Dreamtime and Shutterstock and iStock. But any content I put on Stocksy is exclusive to Stocksy. But as an artist, as a photographer, I'm not exclusive to Stocksy only.
Okay.
iStock's program, on the other hand, as being exclusive, that was the only place you could put your content was on iStock Photo. You couldn't put it on Dreamstime and Shutterstock and any of the other ones that are out there. So this gives us a bit more flexibility. So maybe, there's content that works well on Stocksy, but then there's content that I create that doesn't, and so I can still take that and put it out for other outlets. So Stocksy's approach definitely is different in that it is actually trying to curate, meaning it's trying to create a certain type of look and quality and kind of, so when you come there, you kind of recognize it as different. We're trying to have a more authentic looking content that isn't the kind of, smiling thumbs up guy on a white background, where the scenes look more real, where the people look more like real people, even if they are models. And it's just been great. We just had our second birthday back in March, and it's been really well received. So I've been really pleased to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, the site looks great. So Stephen had a good question out there, and hey guys, if you have any other questions, I'm hitting a lot of Stevens.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, if you have questions, put them in there. I can't believe we're getting that close to the end of time here. But if you're just getting into this, and we talked about Shutterstock, iStock, I mentioned Dreamstime, we talked a lot about Stocksy, and there's others out there too. If you're just getting into this, is there one of these places you should try first?
Well, I would actually try all, because you're going to learn more by doing that than just focusing on one, because you'll find that there's different standards, there's different hoops to jump through, and you might find that certain content does better here than there. You'll find that maybe you just jive better with this one than another. So if you just start with one and you have a bad experience, that might totally put you off. But if you kind of pick, 4 or 5 and kind of dabble with each equally, you might have a better rounded experience, and you'll meet more folks. You'll be like, why is this one be accepted here and rejected there? And why is this one, being licensed here and not there? And that's all part of learning. And I think you can get a much better education that way.
That whole rejection thing can be tough.
But it's good.
It is good because you hopefully you're submitting your 3, back when I had to do it, it was 3 images. You're submitting your 3 images or whatever it is that you think, hey, these are definitely going to make it.
Yeah.
And then when you get rejected, and hopefully they give you a good reason so you can work with it, but when you get rejected, sometimes that can be painful.
It is, yeah, but it's a good pain, even if you don't like it. It's giving you information, and even if it's like it doesn't work here, that's okay. I still get stuff rejected. It still stinks, but you kind of go, okay, you just roll with it. You take that in, you file it away, and you just keep moving forward. And, hopefully it pushes you to create new stuff and to, if you can get any kind of feedback about what's wrong, that's always helpful too. Oftentimes it's easier to get feedback from your peers than it is from the place that is rejecting it.
And sometimes the rejection may not be because the image was bad. It could be, we have enough cat photos, or we have enough of these type of photos.
That's true. That's very true. With Stocksy, they're going for a certain kind of look to content, and I could upload something that could actually be very useful and saleable in other places, but it just doesn't fit what they're looking for, and it will get rejected. And that might steam me a bit, but you gotta kind of have to go, okay, well, I'm going to trust that that's the call they're making, and I'll put it someplace else and see where that goes. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere. Maybe I'm wrong,
What about this? If you're looking to get into this, you go to Stocksy, you go to iStock or some of those places, and you search for what are some of the higher selling stock photos, so you get an idea of what type of stock photo sells. Or if you have an idea of, I have this idea for this shoot, go and search for that and see what else is out there to get ideas for that.
Well, all you have to really do is look at media, and see what images are used. Look through your magazines, look through popular other magazines that you might not have. If you're in any kind of urban area, look at the billboards. If you're flying on a plane, look at the magazines in the back in the seat in front of you, and you're going to see the most popular types of images. And typically, it's people doing stuff. Certainly, people in a business setting tend to, be more so. But people doing things, especially if they're things in that kind of jive with the zeitgeist of the moment. People taking selfies, probably really big right now.
You got an image right there.
Yeah. So, if you stay attuned to whatever the kind of popular thing is that people are doing, but there's always going to be, if you think about who's licensing this stuff, well, probably, companies wanting to sell stuff, and they want to sell stuff of people exercising, people eating well, people traveling, people being families, people raising kids, people raising pets, and you just look and you'll see it, and it's usually stuff that looks like it was pretty authentic. The more authentic, the more real it looks. Then there's, if you look at lots of fashion magazines, you see probably not really stock. You probably see stuff that was shot on assignment, and they're trying to sell clothing and looks. It's not to say you can't get good inspiration from that, but that's probably not
right.
Probably is not stock imagery. Look for more of the commercial uses. Even just look at commercials. Look what's on TV, and you'll see, even though it's video, that's the kind of stuff. That's the genre. It's people doing stuff. People in cars. People on bikes.
I was looking around for a second, thinking I've got to have some kind of ad from a bank or something, some kind of junk mail here, and I don't have any. But yeah, that's right. You look at you look at your mail that you got, and if you have an ad from a bank or from heck, even from your lawn company, chances are those images are stock images. And I see a lot of also wanting to have diversity in the shot, male, female, different ethnic backgrounds, that type of stuff is some of the hot photos too.
Yeah. What can kind of happen, is some of that can look really contrived, it's not to say that it won't get licensed, but it's easy to be kind of ham-fisted with some of that stuff. And I think, it's somewhat trending away from that. So if you can do that in a way that looks authentic, but when it looks really like, yes, you just lined those people up for this shot, didn't you? Kind of thing. Not to say it won't get licensed, because they have and they will, and they do. But
well, I mentioned my cousin who I had on the show number 2, and that's what he would do. He hired models, Model Mayhem or wherever else he would get them from. He would hire models and he would do a photo shoot. He would have them for a couple hours and shoot them in all these different scenes. And some of this is volume 2. My little 18 photos. Back, I think when in the heyday of when I was in it, I was making about $1 a photo per month, and I kind of use that as a gauge. 18 photos, $18 a month, that kind of thing. So,
what year was that? You think
2007, 2008?
Okay, so we could have virtually crossed paths then.
I was submitting to IStock. You could have been one of the people who rejected me, maybe.
Probably was.
More so if my mom's listening, who all 3 of her images were rejected. He did.
Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Mom. And
I thought hers were better than mine. But now you messed me up. I don't know where I was going. But let me show you some of mine. So now that where do I have it? Here we go. I'll show you my number 1 selling image. This is I don't know how well you can see this. Oh, you can't see it at all. Hold on. Oh. There we go. Can I make this bigger? Nope. This is not as good as the site as we were just on.
I can see it on the screen behind you.
Yeah, you can barely see this photo. So let me see if I can make it any bigger. Not really. It's my son eating a hot dog. And I guess the thing I've seen it used a lot for is, of course, hot dog photos, but a lot of summertime stuff. And there's a lot of negative space there. So there's a lot of space for people to put text, and that's what they like to do with a lot of
that's having, that's definitely a hallmark of a good stock photo is if there's some copy space in there, and you almost can't go wrong by including that in a stock image. It doesn't obviously work for every single image, but can be really useful for folks. It could be one of the reasons why it doesn't get used if there's no copy space, because you figure if it's just the subject they're looking for without the copy space, then they can crop it, right? And they'll probably still use it. But if there is no copy space, it's much harder to fake it, fake the copy space. So it's always helpful to include it. Yep. If you look at any of the sites, iStock, DreamTime, Shutterstock, they generally have some kind of list of popular stuff as well, if you need, but it's not going to be any surprise, when it comes time for Christmas, guess what? Christmas images, when it's time for Easter bunnies, there's always the seasonal trends, winter, summer, spring, fall, realizing that we do have customers on the other side of the globe from wherever you might be geographically. So sometimes summer images sell in what is your winter because there are people on the other side of the world who are also licensing it. It's a global thing. So there's seasonal trends, there's holiday trends, but they're, by and large, the bread and butter, if you're just wanting to find the most lucrative area, is the people doing stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's also the most competitive area, right? Because everybody knows, hey, that's the most popular. So, if you can find an area, my suggestion is to shoot what you know, because you'll do a much better job of keywording it, titling it, captioning it, because you know what it is. If you're just shooting stuff because you think it's popular and you don't know what it is, you're not going to do a very good job of keywording it, titling, and captioning it. So shoot what you know, shoot what you have access to, shoot what you love so that you actually maybe enjoy what you're doing, and then find a way to do it in a way that is useful to other people. And what I've always loved about stock, and it's really always been my approach, is it just gives me another outlet for content that would otherwise just sit on my hard drive, but I enjoy making. So if I can create it in such a way that it's useful to other people, and then I make some income off of that, and then I get to see it being used, that's just a win-win all around, because I enjoyed the process of creating it, and I enjoy the income that comes from it, and I enjoy seeing it being used. So, there are other folks who just see it as a business, and they come up with concepts, and they rent locations, and they've got a shoot list for what they need, and they've got models, for a limited amount of time, and they've got the place for a limited amount of time, so they need to get in, do this, hit this list, and get out of there. And maybe that's what they like, and that's what they enjoy. But if that's how they're making their living and they're happy with that, then that's great too. And so what's nice about stock is you're your boss, and however you kind of come to it and can generate content at whatever volume you're comfortable with, that opportunity exists for you. And that's what I love about it.
That sounds like a great closing, but I still got a couple more questions.
Okay, great.
So, and let me get this one for Stephen, because it's the second time he asked. Wildlife, of course, there's no model release needed for that, but I don't know what the market is for wildlife. There may be a market for that.
Well, you can almost answer anything by saying it depends. So I'll say that it depends. But what's the message, right? Is it just a headshot from a monkey in the zoo, or is there something more being expressed there? Is it?
Well, you have, in this good stuff thing, you have two. Let me pull this back up. You have at least two dogs here, and this good stuff is from various photographers, right? I saw Carrie Murphy.
Yeah, that's not just me. There's so many people that I get inspired from of stuff on there.
Yeah, these are great photos. And here's one of two dogs on a beach, and I can see a message with this photo.
Right.
Yeah.
Always think about what's the message? What's the point? What's being communicated here? It's not just a dog, although it could be. There's activity. There's, it's walking. Is it outdoor life? Is it, being with a pet? Whatever the other things that can be used there. And then think about who can use it. Who might use that? Pet store or pet food company, or maybe it's, two people walking the dog, and it's, about being in love, and that's just, now it's a family. So there's always think about the bigger message that's being included in there. And maybe it's just for, like I have a picture of my dog, well, many of my dog, but it's just him. He's a golden retriever, yellow lab mix. So kind of a easily recognizable breed of dog. And it was just him kind of laying there with a baseball kind of chewed up next to his head. He kind of has that look of like, come on, play with me. And I've seen that used in a pet obituary ad.
Oh.
I've seen it used in other places too. And so, it's just a dog with a ball, but that's kind of an iconic type of message, dog with ball. That's it. That's him. And so I've seen other pictures of him. I got another one of him, kind of his face covered in snow. And I've seen that one get passed around on Facebook. Got totally put into this meme of, please let me be an inside dog tonight. And yeah, it's that one. And I started seeing that being shared on Facebook through some other like news companies and whatever. And I was like, that's my dog. Now he's almost 16. He's never spent a night outside in his life. But he loves the snow.
Yeah.
And he, and that's the kind of thing. And there's a little bit of copy space, but here's this dog whose face is just frosted over. And,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it just can get used in a couple different ways.
As a side note, 16 for a golden retriever is excellent.
Yeah.
That is really good. Our black lab is 10. She seems like she's still a puppy almost. So I can hold out hope that she can last at least another 6 years.
Yeah, we feel very grateful that anything after, a lab hits 12, you feel like you're really lucky.
Yeah.
And he's just still hanging in there.
Yeah.
So
he looks great there. So, and that last part you said was so good, but I want to ask one more question as we end here because we're past the hour and I don't want to keep you too long.
That's all right.
But this is such a great topic. We could spend another hour on this thing. But one of the things you mentioned was keywording. And for a lot of us, we're used to SEO on our websites and that kind of stuff. But keywording is sort of the SEO for our photos being found because you got to, this great photo of your dog here is in a sea of hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of options that people have, and getting found is part of the trick.
Sure, and it's a different skill set than you might have, as a photographer. So that's why it really helps if you shoot stuff that stuff that you like, stuff that you've used before, stuff you're familiar with. You'll do a much better job. But you always have to kind of put yourself in the shoes of the person looking, not just as the photographer who created it. So I teach a stock photography class once a year at the Rocky Mountain School of Photography. It's out in Missoula, Montana. Great folks out there. But one of the things we do on the first day is I put everyone in the shoes of being an intern at some type of design capacity. And I give them these briefs where they have to go and find images to fill these different design briefs. Might be for a brochure, it might be for a website, it might be whatever. And it gives them the opportunity to kind of say, okay, I'm not thinking about this as stuff I took, but how would I go about finding images that fill this kind of vague general brief of I need something to go with a law firm's website, Mm-hmm. So what words come to your mind? You might think lawyer or legal or courthouse or, whatever those are where people start, but the people who are looking for your content typically are people who know something about that content, right? And so they might go a little bit beyond just those simple words and you got to know that. So the better you are able to know your subject, do your research and know your subject, the better job you'll be able to do for that content. And the more you think about the fact that there's a message you're trying to convey in there, that's going to help you keyword it as well. So, there's always a gray area. There's always a fine line between going too heavy on keywords and, what we call reaching, where you're just kind of like, okay, that picture of like my dog with the ball, sure, he's laying on sand, but do I need to put keyword sand in there? Probably not, if there's a blade of grass showing, probably not, if there's, think about what's the bigger message. If someone was doing a search and, they were searching for grass and that picture came up, they wouldn't be happy with that. They're looking for something that really shows grass, not that there's happened to be a blade of grass, popping up in the background. So you have to be kind of focused on what's literally there and not what could be there or what used to be there or what you thought would be great if it was there, but what actually is there and what's really important in the
So
image.
enough keywords to be found, but you don't want to go overboard with it. So I don't want to like put in 1,000 keywords and just load it
Right.
up.
Yeah, because you think about every search is really an opportunity for marketing the site, and you want people to have a good experience so that they come back and license more stuff. And so if they're having, if they're doing a search on grass and they're coming up with pictures of your dog, and there's not any grass to be seen,
Yeah.
that's just going to make them go, "This is not relevant to what I'm looking for. This is wasting my time," and you'll lose them. So it's in your best interest if you're putting your work on any place to create a good experience for the people finding it. It's not about you just having your image show up in front of as many people as possible in the hopes that one of them trips over the download button. You want to put it in front of the people who are actually looking for your content and not in front of the people who aren't. And that takes a while. It takes some, depending on the image, that can be kind of challenging. And we've got many contributors. It happens in all the different stock sites that English may not be their first language, and so they're at a further disadvantage if their only keywording options are in English. Just like if I was contributing to a site that was only in Russian, I would be SOL. Forget about it. I couldn't even begin. So, I'm always in awe of people who are multilingual, and they're struggling with English, and I'm like, dude, I can't even. You're way ahead of me. So,
Same here.
yeah. So it's not necessarily a skill that comes easily. So you might, try to find some ways to get some help there to help you out with that.
Okay. Well, Rob, that's a great subject. Thank you for spending time with us tonight. A lot of good information. And I know the questions are still flowing, but we got to let Rob go at some point here. Hey, and it's an excuse for us to have you back at some point in time.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back.
If people want to get in touch with you or find out more about Rob, because I know you guys have your own show, Photo Focus, that you're involved with, right?
Yeah, so I contribute to photofocus.com. I also do a regular monthly Lightroom hangout, and we're still setting up our April one, but probably be towards the end of the month.
Okay.
And then I do, when I'm wearing my Lightroom hat, lightroomers.com is another place for online Lightroom stuff. Sylvanworks.com is where it's just kind of my general other stuff goes. So, and yeah. Search Rob Sylvan. I'm pretty easy to find.
Are you still on the help desk, or what?
Yeah,
are you
still doing Lightroom help desk for
Okay.
Kelby One, formerly NAP, and still doing that. And I still write for Photoshop User Magazine,
Awesome.
And probably some other stuff. And then Stocksy, of course, you can find my stuff there. And really proud of everyone's work that's on there. Just some amazing stuff. Just inspiring me all the time. So
you mentioned workshop. They're asking out here, do you ever do like mentorships or anything like that? And I think your workshop is for the advanced user, right?
Yeah,
At least
well,
that one is.
The class I teach at Rocky Mountain is part of their they call it professional initiative. They have a great program there, and they have the summer intensive. So people are coming, literally spending 6 or 7 months out there, and then when they get to my part is kind of more towards the end of their program, and it's a little bit maybe it might be extra on top of their summer intensive. Whereas people looking to kind of focus on different career options. So there's like a wedding photographer week there. There's, on portraiture. There's on mine on stock. There's on product and commercial type of photography. So these type of career intensives are for them to plug in and say, okay, now I want to just get a week intensive on this particular subject. Mm-hmm. I used to do. I still teach a Lightroom class at Brian Peterson. He's a guy who wrote a book called Understanding Exposure. Excellent book. That was a book I picked up many years ago.
I have that book. Yeah.
And learned a ton from. Just a fantastic book. Great guy. He's got an online learning site called Brian Peterson. Used to be called Perfect Picture School of Photography, PPSOP. Now it's bpsop.com, Brian Peterson School of Photography. And
BPSOP? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I teach a Lightroom class on there. I used to have a stock class and did some mentoring, but it just took so much of my time.
Sure.
I just couldn't do it because it's very time intensive to actually work one on one with someone. So I haven't had the time to do that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah. That you sound like a very busy guy already. I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah, I do have a book on stock photography. It's out of print now, but it's still available as an ebook. Though it's a bit dated, it is a bit of a primer on the whole thing. It kind of covers the model releases, property releases, and the history, and some of the basics. I think I was probably using Lightroom 3 at the time I wrote that.
Is that out there on Amazon?
Yeah, probably on Amazon. It's through Peach Pit
Okay.
Press, and
I will find it and put a link in the show notes for you guys.
But there's so many people. Once you get into it, every one of these sites has a forum. With other contributors, you can definitely learn from or find out. I mean, there's always going to be some negativeness, and
Sure.
and many of it is completely valid. I mean, totally valid. There's definitely some negative stuff that goes on that in the whole stock world. In any part, any realm of photography, there's drama, right? And there
was drama in the iStock forums, yes.
Oh, there's always, yeah. It's a total soap opera.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could tell you stories, but don't take that for what it's worth. I'm not dismissing it because trust me, I know it's totally valid. But there's still good to be had. There's still learning to be had. There's still opportunities for income. And to be honest, through all this, my years with stock photography, I can trace back everything that I'm doing now in Lightroom with the help desk, writing books, magazines. I can trace that all back to the fact that I got involved with iStock Photo in 2001,
Wow.
and where that kind of led me. All these different paths. I can absolutely trace it back to that. All the people that I've met and the opportunities that have come in other ways related to it. So yes, putting images on a site to be licensed is good, and that's part of it. But there's so many more opportunities for interacting with your peers and people all over the world that you just have no idea where it can take you. And I am a living testament to that.
That is another great closer.
All right, good. Try to bring it back around.
Yeah, it is another great closer. With that, we'll end with this, is that if you want a 1-year prepaid membership to Adobe Creative Cloud photography plan, all you got to do is go out to our website or our Facebook page, but go out to our website. On the upper right-hand side corner, there is a subscribe to our newsletter link. Real easy. Just got to give us your email, and then you are in the drawing to win that. We'll give it away sometime and I'm going to let it go all the way to sometime in May as we're going to give it away. Want to let it go a little bit. I'm hoping somewhere in that time frame Lightroom 6 comes out. But, who knows? I'm not going to wait for Lightroom 6, and that's not going to be the driver. But, we're going to let this go a little bit, so I got a few people signed up.
The nice thing about that plan, that Creative Cloud plan that you're giving away, is that whenever it comes out, even after that, the winner will get it. So.
Yeah, that's right. You'll get it when it comes out. And speaking of getting it, if you want to get this show and these other shows, you need to subscribe to the show. You can subscribe for video through iTunes, YouTube, or TiVo. We're actually on TiVo. From the audio side, you can get us on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, of course, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, or Podomatic. We're all over the place out there. We'd love to have you subscribe. We'd love to have you in our Facebook group, where we have an active group, including some of the guys we heard out here in chat. See Tim Foster, Barry, Stephen, Gary, all those guys I think are out in our Facebook group. If you don't like Facebook, we also have a Google Plus community. And we even have forums where I know Gary is out there with me posting. But we have forums on jpegduraw.com/forums. The other thing is the way we're able to give this away is for the people who use our affiliate links. And our main one, of course, is Amazon, which is jpegduraw.com/Amazon. If you use that before you go to Amazon, we get a small credit. We use all those funds to give back to our listeners and our viewers. So anything you're going to buy from Amazon, it doesn't have to be photo related. Anything you're going to buy, go out and use our link before you go there. Or Topaz Labs, clicked the wrong one. Topaz Labs, jpegduraw.com/Topaz Labs. Use that if you're going to buy anything from Topaz Labs, and we'll get a small credit there. Rob, again, thank you for coming. We'd love to have you back someday. And and I can't believe past an hour here, and I've still got stuff on my list. It did.
Well, I'll see if I can find your Facebook group and see if there's any questions in there. I'll try and answer. Not tonight because I'll probably be heading to bed here soon, but I'll try and jump in there this week and see if I can follow up on it.
And if we have several groups, so it's facebook.com/groups/JPEG to Raw. We'd love to have you out there as a member. We try not to abuse you.
That's all right.
But until next week, guys, keep it raw. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.